what type of job sites were you applying on?
I was going everywhere. I mean, primarily networking, but just like everybody else, I was going to Indeed.com, ZipRecruiter, all kinds of websites like that, looking for anything. And working in the media industry, there's not an abundance of openings, and a lot of the radio stations and companies aren't really doing that well. But I was trying to do my due diligence everywhere, and I've been out before, and because these jobs are so hard to find, I was throwing all kinds of things up against the wall hoping something would stick.
Legitimate websites are what you were searching on for the most part. So you get this message from somebody who says that they received your resume. Talk about the company and what happened from there. And you did your research on this as well. Absolutely.
It was a company by the name of Go Media. And I had been looking in the podcasting world because broadcast media on the audio side hasn't been doing as well, and that I think is the future. And I had applied for a bunch of podcast producer positions, and within a couple of days of that, I did receive an email from a company named Go Media, and right away, as a skeptic, I Googled them, went to their website, and amongst the Googles, I put the company name fraud, company name scam, even though it looked very official. I went to Glassdoor, which is a website where people who have worked at certain places give reviews. I could not find anything about this company that seemed odd or suspicious. And they were linked to other companies like The Onion and Deadspin, very, very reputable outlets.
So you're thinking this is great, this is a real opportunity, and you start going through the interview process. What was that like?
They initially said the first interview would be through a Microsoft chat. If you passed that, they would interview me by phone, and then if I got hired, there would be a video conference with the entire team. So I did the initial interview on the chat, and the questions, for people who are in the industry, they were using all of the terms that you would expect. They knew of the software. They gave me a podcast to listen to that was a legitimate podcast. They said, we don't think this host is up to snuff. We would like for you to maybe coach her up a little bit. And then also get in on brainstorming topics, and we're going to send you a bunch of equipment, and they told me all the software that they were going to send for you to edit it and tighten it all up. And the first interview on the chat seemed to go fine. A couple days later, I got a call. You passed the first round. Let's go to the second. Someone's going to call you this afternoon. They called when they said they were going to. More of the same, more of the discussions that you would expect in the terminology. A couple of days later, you passed that. Welcome aboard. Congratulations. And to me, all my problems were solved. And it was a remote opportunity to produce a podcast that was out of New York City so I could work from home. The money was really good. And in some cases, I feel like this whole experience is like when I watched the movie The Sixth Sense. When I saw it and there was that surprise ending, I went back and I looked at it again, and I saw all the clues that were being left that you didn't notice the first time. And this just did seem almost too good to be true, and it was moving really, really quickly. And that's where I'm kicking myself. But outside of that, there was very little that made me think that this was suspicious, even to the point where they sent me a contract and the payroll, and they offered me, do you want to receive a hard check or do you want direct deposit? Which let my guard down because, well, they're giving me two options, and of course in 2023, I'll take the direct deposit option. And that's what nearly nailed me to the wall more than anything else. If I had given that routing number, oof, I can't even imagine.
So they told you that you got the job, and that's when they started that discussion over how would you like to receive payments. Then what happened right before you were about to give that routing number?
I was a couple of hours away from scanning that in and sending it to them when I received a message through LinkedIn from a guy who said, you don't know who I am. I'm from, I think it was South Carolina, and he was retired law enforcement, but had his toe in the broadcasting and the podcasting world. And because of that, since I've had a 30-year media career, he had recognized my name and he had seen me on LinkedIn. And he had applied for a podcast producer position with Hubbard Broadcasting, which is another legitimate company in the US. And he said that he was told his interview was going to be conducted by Brian Mulhern. And because he was able to hear me online, there's plenty of that evidence out there, he said, your voice did not match the voice of the guy that I spoke with. As a matter of fact, he had a little bit of an accent, as did my guy. And I'm like, oh, there's another piece. This is maybe somebody who's operating overseas. But in this day and age, I'm just like, well, you know, the world is all about diversity, and maybe this is just a person who knows his stuff and got hired to do that. So when I heard that, I said, can you tell me any of the other names associated with Hubbard that you have spoken to? And he gave me 2 names, and they were the names of the people who I had been allegedly dealing with. So at that point, my heart just sank, and then I thought, did I give them anything yet that would have been relevant? Thank God the universe intervened in that way, and this guy was kind enough to take the time to contact me, because if not, it would have been an unmitigated disaster.
I'd imagine your feeling at that time was panic on 2 levels. One, the job that you thought you just secured, you don't have because it's not a legitimate job. And then 2, is my personal information compromised at this point?
And then to try to do the legwork on that front, I tried to contact the company, which was called Go Media out of New York City. I could not find a phone number of any kind. I eventually contacted the AG's office. They really couldn't help me. Fortunately, I'm friendly with Alan Fung, who worked with my wife as an attorney years ago. And my wife said, you should give Alan a call. I'm sure he can steer you in a direction. Alan put me in touch with Detective Eric Bakari from the state police, who is phenomenal at what he does. And we worked together, and within, I would say, an hour, he was able to track down that these guys came out of the Middle East. They had in some way hijacked Go Media's website within the previous 2 weeks. And as I said to him, these are pros, because a lot of times when you get a scam, because people are from other countries, maybe some of the paperwork they have, the grammar is off or spelling or things like that. And even the fact that they just knew all of the terminology, they were working on that level. It's terrifying, not only from the perspective that I still don't have a job, but who can I trust at this point? Can I go back on those websites? I'm not blaming the websites, but these people are so good. They know what they're doing, and you find somebody like me who's in a vulnerable position like this, and sometimes maybe you want to believe something that's not necessarily true.
And the state police detective told you that this isn't the first time he's heard about this, right?
No, this kind of thing goes on all the time, unfortunately. And it does seem like they are just getting better and better at looking like the real McCoy, as opposed to in the past where maybe it was a little bit slapdash and sloppy, and they know that they have to be on that level, and that's why they're there.
Are you scared to submit resumes now?
Kinda. Tamara, if I could afford to retire right now, I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying doing nothing, you know, hanging out with you this afternoon. And there is an element of that. Unfortunately, I need to make a living. I have to get to the finish line to retire here. But now, outside of networking within my little world, I'm not sure who to trust. And the vast majority of the time when I have used these websites, and maybe this should have been a signal, I never hear anything back. This was one of the rare moments where I heard something back and got an offer, and maybe that should have made me suspicious. But what is an unemployed person to do? And really my job now, and Detective Bakari's at this point, is to just raise awareness for people in my position and realize how close you can come to losing everything that you've already saved when you are in a position where you need to add to those savings.
Right, because you can't prosecute those overseas, unfortunately.
Right.
Now, earlier you did say that going back and looking through everything, you did notice some things that may have been red flags, that looking back, you're like, maybe that was a little bit suspicious. What were those warning signs?
Well, the accent on the phone call for me made me think to myself, because you are sort of embarrassed when you feel like you've been taken advantage of, and thank God it didn't get to a point where I really got hurt by this. But, you know, I try not to be judgmental in that way, but that was a warning sign. They were pressuring me a lot to get things done quickly, and even that raised a red flag with me, and I would say to my wife, I don't know, there's something about this that seems a little bit off, because I had a dad in the hospital at the time, and I told him that, and I was also under the weather, and they didn't seem to care. And my wife said, look, you've been working on a playground for your entire life, being on the radio and doing all these dumb jobs. You don't know how these HR departments work, and they're under a lot of pressure. So I just kind of swept that under the rug. The one thing that I'm really upset about is, of all of the equipment that they were going to send me, they did tell me, we need you to buy a new iPad and we will reimburse you. And that should have maybe raised a red flag. And I did purchase the iPad through a friend who works at the Apple Store. Fortunately, I was able to return it to get a full refund. But I'm thinking, geez, if they're sending me all this other equipment, why do they need me to purchase an iPad? And I think what it was going to turn into was, and I did get paperwork for it, they were going to reimburse me for it. And that was another big red flag.
Hi everyone, it's Patrice Wood from NBC 10. Thanks for checking out the NBC 10 WJAR YouTube channel. Click the links on your screen for more stories from across Southern New England. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button below to get notified anytime we post an update on YouTube. As always, thank you for turning to 10.